All right, we're rolling. Welcome to the Podcast Engineering Show. I'm happy you're here. I'm really happy you're here. You know, you could be doing so many other things with your time, but you decided to press play on this podcast. So I really appreciate that. My name is Chris Curran. I produce podcasts for mid to large companies and authors, and I also run Podcast Engineering School. And every week on this show, we bring you podcast production techniques on a silver platter. Every other week, I interview a guest, and then the in-between weeks, which is what this episode is, I talk about the daily goody. I summarize the couple weeks worth of daily goodies, which is my daily blog post that I write. So you can also sign up to receive those in your email. Just go to the website, podcastengineeringschool.com. And today's a bonus because I did a little audio comparison between three of the podcast recording services available. And they are, the three I did this little test with are Zencastr, Squadcast, and Ringr. So I'll introduce that little test in a minute, but I just wanted to tell you, if you implement the best of what you learn here on this show, your podcasts will sound a lot better and you'll spend less time producing them. And I really believe that you, even if you're not an audio professional or trained audio engineer, I believe that you can produce really good sounding audio, really great sounding audio. I believe you can. I really do. So a few announcements. Podcast Engineering School starts April 16th, and we conduct the course every quarter. So if you can't make the April 16th one, then I think we start the next one the end of June, and then we start the next one in September. I guess details are on the website on that. Upcoming episodes, interviews I've done, Emily Prokop, Carrie Caulfield, Glenn the Geek, Shawn Kitchen, Nick Dunkerley, and Evo Terra. Yes, I'm getting ahead of myself with these interviews. And it's cool. I'm putting out an interview every other week. So now I have a bunch in the can. And also, over the next week or two, I'm going to record 3 or 4 more. So I'm going to be way ahead of myself, which is awesome. Okay, so next week, I will be at NAB. We will be manning the Ask the Expert booth. It's a little booth they have there in the Podcast Pavilion area. It's called Ask the Expert, and I will be there. It's from April 8th to the 11th in Las Vegas. It's the biggest trade show in the country, I believe. There's going to be over 100,000 people. And NAB is National Association of Broadcasters, and they're really trying to include podcasting because, podcasting is growing up and becoming more popular. It's such a wonderful medium but it's growing very slowly, which is a good thing, I think. But I will be there. Also, Addy Saucedo will be there with her podcast planner. She'll be helping out at the booth. And also Ralph and Lynn Rivera. Ralph M. Rivera. They'll be there helping at the booth too, Ask the Expert, and they'll be representing their, of course, Podcasters Toolbox. And so that's what happened. I was like, I need some experts to help me at the booth. Who are some experts I know? And Addy and Ralph and Carolyn fit the bill, so we're going to have some fun. So keep an eye out for, maybe some live streams or definitely a bunch of social media posts from NAB at the Podcast Pavilion. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so... all right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. I used to have a client who said that every episode he did of his show, after the intro and the pleasantries, he'd be like, okay, let's get into the meat and potatoes. And then he would ask his first question. So here, what I've done is I did a little test because I just started using Squadcast for all my client sessions over the last maybe 3-4 weeks, something like that. For the past, 3 or 4 years before that, well, maybe not 3 or 4, probably 3 years before that, I was using Zencastr for the most part. And of course, I do also subscribe to Ringr because all in all, that's a good service. And so I was hearing some things and some differences, and I'm like, you know what? I got to do a test. So I thought, I'll just do the test, and then I'll play the audio on one of these, one of my goodie bag episodes, which this is. So what we're going to do is, so the 3 that I tested are Zencastr, Squadcast, and Ringr. and I'm going to play a little clip of me talking that I recorded on each one. So, for instance, I'm going to play 3 clips. So we're going to call them clips 1, 2, and 3. And I'm not going to tell you which one is which, though. I'm just going to play 1, 2, and 3, and then you're going to, be able to hear the difference, maybe. By the way, if you're listening on earbuds or if you're in a car, it might be hard to tell the difference. So if you want to really listen to the audio quality difference, make sure you're in a quiet place wearing, good headphones or listening on speakers that really well or something, because the differences are, I guess, in general, kind of slight, but there are some differences. So that's the deal. I'm going to play the 3 clips, and then I'm going to actually, after I play the 3 clips, I'm going to mention what I heard. But I'm still not going to tell you which one's which. But I'm going to mention some of the qualities of the audio that I heard. And then I'm going to play all 3 again for you, just so you can hear them again. And then over the next couple weeks on social media, you need to reach out to me and tell me which one was which. Which one was audio clip number 1? Was it Zencastr, Squadcast, or Ringr? What was audio clip number 2? Zencastr, Squadcast, or Ringr? So you can try to hear the differences and try to discern or maybe guess which one is which. So I don't know. I thought it would be a fun little thing to do. So here we go. I'm going to play the 3 clips in a row right here. Podcast Engineering School. Learn to engineer and produce podcasts at a professional level. Podcast Engineering School. Learn to engineer and produce podcasts at a professional level. Podcast Engineering School. Learn to engineer and produce podcasts at a professional level. All right, there you have the 3 clips. And so my perceptions of these 3, I think one had pretty terrible artifacts, and it almost sounded like someone was talking in the background. So just weird artifacts. It was really weird. Okay, so that was my perception of one of the clips. My perception of another one of the clips was that it was clean and good, and probably the best of the 3, just clean and good sounding. I didn't hear anything wrong with it. And the other one, my perception was it was good, almost as good as the one I thought was the best, but in the sibilance, the sibilance was a little swooshy, or maybe like a little overdriven or distorted. I mean, very slightly, but I just heard in the sibilance that it was a little swooshy, or I don't even know how to describe it. Like, one word that came to mind was, and I don't know if this makes sense, but smeared. Just like it just was like a little smeared or swishy, or not crystal clear and clean. I don't know if that makes sense. But anyway, so that's what I thought of the 3, but I'm not telling you which one's which. I'm going to play the 3 again right now. Podcast Engineering School. Learn to engineer and produce podcasts at a professional level. Podcast Engineering School. Learn to engineer and produce podcasts at a professional level. Podcast Engineering School. Learn to engineer and produce podcasts at a professional level. All right, well, those are the 3 clips, numbers 1, 2, and 3. So now on social media, either on Twitter or the Facebook, Podcast Engineering School has a Facebook page. You can like that and then post on there, I guess. I don't know. Is that how Facebook pages work? Or do I have a group? I don't know. I don't know what I have. But yeah, so on social media, definitely tell me what you think is clip number 1, clip number 2, or clip number 3. Or you could even, on the Podcast Engineering School website, on the post, the blog post for this episode, you can comment on that. That'd be cool too. So whatever you want to do, let me know which you think is which, and I will announce what these 3 are. Like I said, definitely by the next 2 weeks from now when I do the next Daily Goody episode. So hopefully you can wait that long, and it'll also give you a chance to maybe download the audio and put it on your computer and listen through your good headphones or monitors or something. So, all right, now let's get to the meat and potatoes again of this episode, which is the Daily Goody. So again, I write a little blog post every day, and don't expect too much. It's not supposed to be, serious podcast production training every day. It's just a little daily goodie. It's a little morsel of goodness for your ongoing learning. Okay? So, and you can also, don't forget, sign up. You can receive these daily goodies in your email. You can receive it every day or a weekly summary, and you get to choose which one. So, all right. So now we're going to start. We're going to start from March 1st, and we're going to go through about March 14th. Okay. So March 1st, volume spikes at the beginning of sentences. So you ever hear that in some audio? Like when someone starts speaking, it's loud, and then within the first couple seconds, the volume goes down, and then it stays at that level for the rest of the time. Well, someone wrote me a question. I'll read it. When one of the participants on a podcast doesn't speak for a while, and then they start a sentence, immediately their audio volume spikes loudly for a second or two, and then comes back to a normal level for the rest of the time that they continuously speak. And this happens throughout the episode. Every time they start speaking after they are silent for a while. So how to handle this in post-production? Okay, so my answer, and in general what's happening here is that these programs and apps that we're using to connect, like Skype, let's say, they are really processing the audio a lot. And so what happens is a lot of these programs use the automatic gain control, which is ACG. And so, well, sometimes they use automatic gain control and or compression. And sometimes they use a lot of compression. So when you use some of these services, they're really processing the audio a lot. And sometimes it takes like a second or two for the processing to kick in, because basically the program has to hear a bit of sound to sort of gauge how loud the level is. And so what happens is for a second or two, it'll sort of evaluate the level of the sound and then apply the gain control or the compression. So that's why this phenomena happens. One thing you can do in Skype especially is turn off the ACG, like turn off the automatic gain control. Because if you're recording audio seriously and you want to, do serious production with audio, you don't want Skype bringing the level up and down. No. You just want the audio as it is, straight, flat. Then you can do whatever you want to do with it afterwards, right? So, okay, so the other, if you come across this phenomena and you need to fix it, couple things you can do is, one, use a compressor in the post-production, and you can set it to a medium or fast attack. And so when the audio comes in loud, the compressor will squash it down. But then when the audio drops down, the compressor will sort of let go, and so that'll sort of even out the level. And you can also, the second way to do it, and I'm sure there's more than two, the second way to do it is in your DAW, you can use volume automation. So you can literally bring down the beginning of a sentence and have it fade up over that, let's say it's 2 seconds, right? So if the recording is loud for 2 seconds and then it comes down, what you do in your automation is at the beginning of the sentence, bring it down and fade it up slowly over those 2 seconds. So you can sort of manually even out the volume there. So those are a couple things you can do. It doesn't happen a lot, but and sometimes it happens sort of randomly. I've had that happen randomly. Like someone will just connect, someone maybe wearing a headset, or their setup almost doesn't matter. It's just sometimes weird things happen when you're connecting over the internet with audio. And so sometimes that does happen, and then you got to fix it. So, okay, moving on. What is monaural, stereo, and surround? So, okay, well, monaural, which is also, we say mono, right, is one channel of audio. Stereo is 2 channels of audio, right? The classic left and right. And obviously podcasts are typically published in mono or stereo, right? Depending on a lot of things. So many podcasters prefer to publish episodes in mono because it makes the file size smaller by half the size. And a lot of people like to publish smaller files, so they publish a mono file and it's smaller, and that's good. But other people, like me, I prefer to publish in stereo because of the music. So even, not on this episode, but on a normal, when I do an interview episode, I play the music and do sort of like a formal intro. Of course, I try to have fun with it. But the music is in stereo, and I want the music in stereo. So anyway, so that's stereo. And also surround sound, well, that's obviously with like movies and stuff. Like surround sound is multiple channels. So mono is 1, stereo is 2. Surround sound can be 6, 8, 10. It can be a lot of different channels. So the classic is the 5.1 surround sound, right? But they also have 7.1 and 9.1. And it, includes a subwoofer, left, right, back right, a center channel and all that. So that's surround sound. So it just comes down to how many channels of audio, 1, 2, or more. Okay, next one, fast processor, lots of RAM. Fast processor, lots of RAM. When you're using a computer to produce audio or video, it's really good to have a fast processor and lots of RAM. I mean, if you have a computer that's really wimpy, has a slow processor and very little RAM, it's going to take a long time to process audio and video files. So, and of course, this is a generalization, but in my experience over the years, and what I've always tried to do is buy the strongest computer I can buy with the fastest processor, the most amount of RAM. And so that way, when I'm doing anything with audio or video, my computer can do it much faster, and therefore it saves me a lot of time. Okay, it costs more money up front, but it does save me a lot of time in processing. So anyway, when you're going to buy something new, just keep that in mind. If you're going to be producing a bunch of audio and video, I understand a lot of us want to, buy an economical computer, but especially if this is your business, like if you're an editor and you're making money from it, then, you need the right tools for the job. And because you're a professional, you should have professional tools. So, okay, the next one, the pressure of a publishing schedule. Yes. Well, there's a lot of podcasters in the world who say, I put out an episode every 2-3 weeks or maybe once a month or something, whatever. If they don't have a schedule, then what happens is they go way too long, right? They'll go 7 weeks without putting out an episode, and then they'll be like, oh man, I got to put out an episode. So it's better to have a regular schedule. That's first of all. And, that feeling you get when, like, I'm sure you've probably had it when it's like the night before you're supposed to put out an episode and you haven't even recorded it yet. And it's like, oh my God, like that's pressure. So, and this is what I felt on and off with this show over the years. But recently, like I mentioned earlier, I've have a bunch of interviews already recorded. So now I feel so much better. Like now I can, like the raw interview is done. Now I just need to obviously produce the episode by a certain day, but I don't have to like scramble to find a guest and try to figure out how to do it and ask, for special favors and all that. So, being ahead of the game is really, really handy. And that goes in any area of your life. Anyone who always waits till the last minute to do everything, they live under constant stress, and that's not good. That's not good. Okay, next one. If 2 guests must share one microphone. If 2 guests must share more than one microphone. All right, first of all, don't do this unless there's absolutely no way that each guest can have their own microphone. So for professional audio, everybody needs their own microphone because you need to record them separately so that later on in the post-production, you can process them separately and fix all their mistakes on their own track. Okay, but if people need to share a mic, okay, sometimes it happens. If you're using a regular cardioid mic, like ATR 2100 or an SM7B, and you have to have 2 people on one mic, the guests should sit side by side as close as possible, and you should put the mic basically pointing right between them. So, and then have them just stay in one spot the whole time. That's obviously really helpful. Now, if you have a microphone that has an omnidirectional pickup pattern, like the infamous Blue Yeti, then then you can just do the old put the Blue Yeti or put the omnidirectional microphone in the middle of the table and have 3 or 4 or 5 people sit around the table. And as long as they're all about the same distance, it should be, each voice should be picked up, fairly equally. Unless one person's voice is really loud and or another person's voice is really soft. Then you got to do funny things like have the person with the really soft voice, they should move closer to the mic or move the mic closer to them. So anyway, also if you have a microphone that's bidirectional, they call that the figure 8 pattern, which the Blue Yeti also has. Then 2 guests should face each other with the mic in between them. And that's actually not, having a bidirectional pickup pattern microphone between 2 people is not a bad way to record 2 people. Again, you have to get the distance right because if someone's much louder, then it'll just be annoying. And of course, also, you'll still be recording the 2 voices on one track. So in terms of doing post-production later, your hands are tied a little bit because you won't have individual control over their tracks. Okay, next one. Oh, Podfest. See, I did a post when I was at Podfest. Oh, for the contest. Anyway, Podfest was awesome. Jeez. I hope you all can attend Podfest next year. And Podcast Movement this coming August. All right, next one. Helping guests connect via online recording services. Okay, well, I played some examples of some of these earlier from Zencastr, Squadcast, and Ringr. But when you're using these services to record your interviews, over the internet, sometimes you have to help the guests. So some guests are good with computers. They might have used their microphone before. They know how to plug in their mic and they know how to connect and they can just figure it out because it's not hard. But some people find it very, very difficult. So they just won't be able to figure it out. And so it'll be like time for the interview and they won't be there because first of all, they might, a lot of these services, well, pretty much all of them work best with the Chrome browser. So if someone doesn't have Chrome, then they're like, oh, I got to download Chrome. And again, if it's someone who can't use a computer very well, even downloading and installing Chrome is a big deal for them, right? So the best thing to do, a really good practice is to have everyone's phone number before the session starts. So if you're going to have a guest or if your client's going to have a guest, make sure that you have their phone number so that if time comes for the episode or for the recording session and they're not there, you can call them on the phone and say, hey, how you doing? Are you doing okay? Are you able to connect? And of course, they're going to say, no, I was just doing this and I can't figure out this and blah, blah, blah. And then guess what? Then you talk them through it. Okay, well, start with Chrome and all this. And do you have a regular microphone or are you using earbuds or a headset? So anyway, I guess the thing there is just to always have a phone number because if someone is not able to connect, then you can always call them up and say, hey, can I help you? All right, next one. Intro music that goes on way too long. Intro music that goes on way too long. Intro music is really nice. It can set the vibe. It can, pump up the energy and all that. But sometimes a show will start playing and there'll be music playing at the very beginning, and then the music just goes on and on and on, and there's no human being there. No one's speaking. And then after like 20 or 30 seconds, someone will come in and say, hey, welcome to the show. And it's like, look, there are no rules. I understand that. And everyone can do whatever they want. And I understand that. And I love that. But at the same time, it's definitely one of my pet peeves when I tune into a show and then the music just goes on and on and on. It's not necessary. People aren't tuning in to hear music. They're tuning in to hear the show. So, I just wanted to mention that. And, so you could still get the vibe, you could still pump up the energy, but you can also get to it. That's sort of, anyway, that's my philosophy towards it. I wonder what yours is. Do you like 30 seconds of music with no human being speaking? Maybe you do. Maybe everyone does. I don't know. I don't think so. All right, next one. Making edit cuts on words and syllables. All right, well, this is about editing, and you probably should read the post but the gist of this post is that, when you're doing editing on a podcast, sometimes someone will screw up something. They'll screw up the pronunciation of a word, and then they'll just say the word again, and then they'll keep talking. And then it's easy to, you just edit out the bad pronunciation and you keep the good pronunciation. Sometimes people do it with sentences, right? Sometimes they'll start answering a question, and after like a sentence, they'll be like, all right, wait a minute, let me start again. And then they just start their answer again. That's great. Those edits are easy, right? We all know that. Now, the difficult ones to cut are sometimes when you need to use advanced techniques, like you don't just cut on the first word of a sentence, you might cut on the second or third word in the sentence for various reasons. And again, you should probably read the post. It's not long, but or you can even cut on syllables of words. Sometimes literally people will screw up the beginning of a word, but the end of the word is fine. And then they'll redo it and they'll do the opposite. So anyway, what I'm saying is there are like these advanced ninja tricks of editing where you don't have to just make the standard edits that a novice would make. You can literally cut on words, on syllables, and it really, when you start thinking that way, it makes it easy. Because then, well, easier, I should say. Because then when someone screws up a sentence and they sort of redo it, you can look to many different places to make the cut. And of course, you want to make the cuts that sound most natural. All right, next one. Small tweaks when mastering. Well, I've talked about mastering before, and mastering is a step which not many podcasters do. It's the last step where you might add a little compression or EQ and all that. So the title of this post is Small Tweaks When Mastering, and this is my experience that you should only make small tweaks when you're mastering. If you have to like add a bunch of EQ and, or take out a ton of low end or I need to use a compressor because somebody's voice is poking out in the mix. Like, that's not the time to do all that work. Like that, you should do that in the mix. And so the mastering is just like the final little icing on the cake. Yeah. And we've talked about that before. So, okay, next one. Know where distortion's coming from, right? Sometimes you hear distortion and you got to know where it's coming from. And recently at Podfest, my friend Michael Helms was in a session, and there were speakers on the stage. I think two people were on stage presenting, and they were speaking, and their audio was distorting. And my friend Michael Helms was sitting near the sound guy, the guy who was running the camera and also had the little, the little mixer there for the audio. And he basically saw the guy just pull down the faders, but it was, so the volume was a little lower, but it was still distorted. So the point here is that the distortion, like, you got to know where the distortion's coming from. And in this case, the distortion's coming from the mic preamp, right? If the mic preamp is too loud, too high, there'll be distortion. So the right answer, or the right thing to do in that situation that I just described, is not just to lower the faders, but to lower the mic preamps a little bit so that there's no more distortion. Then you might have to push up the faders slightly because the level is going to be lower. So then you push up the faders, and then you can have the same volume audio, but without the distortion. So, and this is true in your little home studio too. Like, if you ever hear distortion, there's a level or something is overdriven and it's distorted, well, you got to know your signal flow. You got to know where your signal's going and what mic preamp you're using and all that. And that way you can figure out where's the distortion coming from. All right, next one. Continued learning. Yeah, this is a big one. I mean, still to this day, I mess around with EQs and compressors and a bunch of plugins, like all different plugins, or I'll just download a new plugin. I'll be like, hey, let me try this. So I'm always learning. I'm always trying things, and I'm, always trying to improve what I'm doing. After all these years, I still do it. And for many reasons. Number one, you continue learning. That's how you get really, really good. And the other thing is it keeps you sharp. It keeps your ears sharp, meaning you sort of train your ears better to hear in a more fine-tuned way. So that, that's the real value of an audio engineer is their ear. It's not about, hey, where do I plug in the mic and which fader do I push up? That's fine. You need to know that. But what sets the professional apart from the amateur is their ear, what they hear. So when you continue learning, you will continue, honing your hearing, or that's not a good way to say it. Perfecting your hearing. No, there's an adjective I'm looking for. I can't think of it. I'll think of it. All right. Next one. This is going to be our last one. Adjusting the phase of recordings. Okay. And I put a note at the top of this daily goodie. Note, this is not usually a necessary process. So if you never do this in your whole life, you'll be fine. But for us crazy audio people, haha. Okay. So phase is, do you ever look at the waveform on the screen and like it's lopsided? Like there's way more of, like it's skewed toward the top. Like there's way more of the wave above the zero line than below it. And it just looks lopsided. Well, that's phase. And again, it's not a big deal. Now, I do fix the things like that using RX7, and you can use other plugins as well, I'm sure. But again, if you don't have those tools, it's not a big deal. I mean, you'll still be able to play the audio. You can still hear the audio. The only thing that might happen is, well, you don't have as much headroom, because if the wave is skewed toward either the positive or negative, it ends up being closer to zero, like closer to clipping. But besides that, it's not a big deal, okay? And maybe technically there are good reasons to fix that phase issue, but again, in practical reasons for podcast production, it's not really necessary. All right. Well, that's going to be it for today. Hey, I hope you guys liked my episode with Brody Brazil of NBC Sports California, episode number 121. Did you guys like that one? I love that one. And thanks again, Brody. And anyway, thank you all for listening. This went long. Wow. Approaching 35 minutes. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, let me know. And the best way for these daily goodies is go to the website and comment on the post. So if you have a question about one of these topics that I just talked about, one of these daily goodie posts, go to the post and comment on it and ask the question, and then I'll answer you. And then everyone else can see the question and the answer. And, it's a beautiful thing. All right. Well, thank you again. We'll see you all next week with an awesome interview. All right. Take care.